Dr. Hackey Reitman. Welcome to another episode of Exploring Different Brains. And today we have with us Travis Misurell, and he is a very interesting guy. He's got the Future Is Now Coalition, FiNC. He's going to tell us all about it. Welcome, Travis.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Future Is Now Coalition, basically we are trying to do an unprecedented mission to really evolve democracy and upgrade our political structure. We're completely nonpartisan. We don't stand by specific policies. Our main goal is just to empower all Americans.
How did you first get involved with this?
It started out really all my life since I was 12. I looked around in sixth grade math class and realized that I don't think like everyone else. And I actually didn't know I was autistic until about 2.5, 3 years ago. I knew all my life I was kind of obsessed with knowing that I was different, and I would constantly analyze it. And I looked at different personality disorders and different things in psychology. I've even come across autism, but when it was framed from kind of in an older narrative, I didn't relate to it as much. But then it was about 2.5, 3 years ago that I ran into other autistics explaining it from the autistic perspective, and then immediately I knew that's how my mind works. And like, I'm still different even within autism. I mean, autism in general, everyone's unique. Every autistic is unique, or the skills they have, the weaknesses is all unique in itself. But I still felt different. But the autistic infrastructure, really knowing that I was autistic, and that's a big piece of who I am, really put everything into the right perspective for me, and also helped me figure out how to connect with other people that would think like me. So it was actually at the same time, literally within learning that I was autistic, within 2 to 3 weeks, this vision started coming together of coming up with this huge way of restructuring and reframing our biggest society issues. And it really came hand in hand with learning my autism. In some way, all my life, I've been always trying to think of, I'm obsessively looking at the bigger picture of life, of like, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? Stuff like that. I've always been always focused on that kind of those kinds of things. And I always felt that I had some way to, some way to explain, to talk about the reality in a little bit of a different way. And actually, even back in high school, I had a couple followers here and there that really liked how I would talk about reality, how I talk about the mind. And so I always had a couple followers here and there. But then when I learned about the autism a couple of years ago, that really really narrowed down my verbiage on it, and really helped me figure out the difference of where am I neurodiverse, where am I just uniquely Travis, and where is it just my personality. So really that put all those things together, kind of I kind of say my world turned right side up at that time with the autism. And literally within weeks of that, I turned to my family and I could figure out how to change the world. And then it took almost a year even after that to really formulate the whole mission in tangible enough. So then about a year from there, that's when I was able to start gathering people, and now I have a team of about 40 people that have been helping me on this mission.
Boy, they have been really helping you all along the way. And you've built a good team,
Yeah.
Tell us about the 4 pillars of FiNC.
Sure. So the first pillar is digital politics, and the emphasis on that is it goes beyond just technology. It's going to integrate technology, but it goes beyond it. One of the main focuses is transcending partisan boundaries. So we want to be able to have citizens just go policy by policy, what makes the most sense to get the most Americans the happiest and the healthiest at the most efficient way possible. And that should be the ultimate goal for government. And so we want to try to get out of the tribal loyalties of partisanship, and just go, try to break those barriers, allow for multiple parties, and just generally allow America, the average American citizen, to actually choose how politics should evolve. The other piece to digital politics is focusing on the will of the majority. That we want politicians to focus on that. If most Americans agree on certain things, that policies should move towards the agreement of what Americans want. rather than just the way the system is right now, where like there could be 70% of Americans agreeing on a certain policy, and yet Congress will be saying, oh, we're 50-50, can't get anything passed. But we want it to kind of shift the framing of politics and how people decide who to vote for, how people get their information and choose who represents them the best, as well as eventually have politicians campaign in a different way. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is digital democracy. So that's the technology in itself. So it's going to be a one-stop shop for all political information. It's going to be on a blockchain, which in itself is a democratic way of storing information. And the idea is we want it's focused on accessibility and transparency, and we just want the average American to just be able to easily go on one place, see all the information they need about who they want to vote for. Part of the features is kind of like a dating service, where it'll show that like there's an 80% match between you and a certain politician. And so it doesn't matter to us where you stand on policies. We just want to match you with the right person that you feel is most representative of yourself. There'll also be permanent report cards for these politicians. So it's going to show what their promises are. Do they deliver on their promises? Things like that, as well as showing where their money's coming from, who's funding their campaigns, and taking a look at, just kind of seeing where their motivations are focused towards. And so that's going to be, it'll take a few years to get to this point, but it's going to be citizen owned. So it'll eventually be that every American will have an equal ownership stake of the technology. And one day FiNC will actually just gift that to America, and that they'll forever be a private entity overseeing our public election system. And so one day, at first, FiNC would be kind of a guardian of the technology, and then slowly, as it stabilizes and as enough Americans get involved in it, we would slowly pull away until it's just completely up to a private vote of all American citizens to continue to run and evolve this technology to better be like a watchdog and just overseeing our election process. So that's that. Then the pillar number 3 is about reframing society. So that gets into the psychological aspects of this, of where it's about reframing how people see each other, how people are framing like politics, seeing each other within the partisan structures. A lot of the divisiveness of today is about people villainizing one another, and we need to understand that like everyone decides where they make their decisions based on the logic that they have of what they think is reality, what they understand, the facts and how they were raised. And like, for example, a lot of Democrats will say, oh, all Republicans are evil. And like, yeah, maybe there's some racism here and there in that group, but it's not like 100% of them. There's a lot of complexities to everyone. And like, we want them to understand that like, there's something to be said of like people that feel that they should have less taxes and less government. They're raised that government's part of the problem, that they're not trustworthy, this and that. And frankly, right now, there's a very low level of trust in government at this time. So it's understandable where they're coming from. And so we want to, pillar 3 is really about understanding these other people's perspectives, understanding that we do all see different realities. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, and that, most people are not like outright like evil the way some people try to villainize one another. And like, yeah, there's some bad people out there, but overall, most people in society, they want us to get along. They want us to be prosperous, and they're just trying to make the decisions the best they can based on the facts that they know. Pillar 3 also incorporates neurodiversity. So that's about like autism and other neurodiversity. It's going to be big in the narrative that I'm autistic, and that I needed the actual autistic framework in my mind to come up with this complex mission, to come up with all these different intricacies, all the different dimensions, and doing something just so unprecedented and just reframing everything. I couldn't have done that if I didn't have the autistic framework in my mind. So that's a big piece to pillar 3 as well, and just understanding that that neurodiversity is part of the key to how to tackle today's world problems from a different angle, and like incorporating other different people's perspectives is key to like coming up with different solutions. You know, we've been doing the same thing decade over decade, and like we have almost the same problems that we had 30 years ago. We're almost still talking about the same issues, and they haven't been conclusive. And so it's time to start incorporating other thought processes, other ways of going about these issues and things like that. So that's a lot about pillar number 3. And then the 4th pillar is uniquely FiNC. So that's how we're going to run ourselves as a company, how we're going to build our own accountability and transparency within ourselves. And for one example, we're kind of building what would be it'd be akin to like an employee-owned nonprofit, where instead of a board of directors, the employees are the board of directors, the employees are the check and balance. And the idea is that, you know, you can't control, if we have 50 employees, 100, hopefully eventually 1,000 employees, you can't control them. There'll be new people coming in, people coming out, and overall, like, so they're not going to be controllable, they're not corruptible, and just in itself, that would develop a healthier checks and balance. So like me as the founder can't go out of control in a certain way. They're going to choose salary caps on me and any other executives on the team. They're going to have, they'll set up committees to go over like our expense accounts. So they make sure like I'm not spending like I'm not expensing like $10,000 business dinners or buying a car with the money, things like that. I'll have a set salary, like everyone else is going to have a salary, no profits, no commissions. So that's a big piece of it, as well as we're going to be doing a lot of ethical business practices. Just our management styles are going to be very different. We're big on work-life balances and giving employees a bigger voice, even from the associate level, and just really creating a different atmosphere, a different way of running a business, and really to prove to society that you can be ethical, you could be socially responsible, environmentally responsible, good with your employees, and still be a very financially viable organization and be very successful even with those things. And so it's to build unprecedented trust with America, so they understand that we have the proper checks in place, as well as become a model for the future for other organizations to follow this new corporate structure that we're designing. And also with the uniquely FiNC is tying again with the neurodiversity, is building our management styles in a way that's more conducive to neurodiversity, and we're really handling everyone as individuals. And you know, people might need a little bit of an adjustment of environment. Some people needed certain communication methods work better for them. Some people need a lot of structure. Some people want very little structure. And so we're building different processes and operations to be more allowing for people as individuals, rather than just fitting everyone inside a box.
Good stuff. Everybody's different. Every brain is different.
Mhm.
What are some of the accessibility issues neurodivergent individuals may run into by being politically active?
So a lot of it is, you know, being like in today's politics is very socially oriented. So, you know, some people don't feel like they could be part of interacting with a lot of people. Some people kind of want to be, but kind of beat it to themselves, but still have their voice heard and still be able to be represented properly. So like the digital democracy platform, they don't necessarily have to be social on there. There'll be a polling system where people can vote on where they stand on policies, where they stand on social issues, things like that, to get a real accurate map of what Americans want. So their voice will be heard in that light. And then also the other thing with politics is it's very stuck where it's overly academic, and like the verbiage that's being used in politics, like it's more like people have to be like super knowledgeable about these different policies and different issues in order to even understand what's going on. Whereas what we're trying to do is make politics more digestible and be able to give bite-sized pieces of just like an overarching concept of, you know, like going over a certain policy just in just a few minute video. You could kind of go over a general gist of like the concepts behind it, some of the facts and evidence of what goes for certain policies, against certain policies, and just so making it easier for like an average person or neurodivergent people to understand this information without having to spend hours and hours or even like a whole education to learn a certain background before they could understand what the policy is or what the politician is going towards.
Where do you hope to see the Future Is Now coalition 5 years from now?
So yeah, we have very high hopes that we want to become a name in every household. We want people to be talking about this as the future of politics, that digital politics is the future of politics. We want people to start learning to reframe it. So instead of like, oh, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, or I'm a third party or whatever, that we start branching out to this kind of new verbiage and new framing of it, where, you know, we are able to go policy by policy and not just subscribe to an entire set of policies by one group. And so we want to be a big influence on society, where most people would go on the digital democracy platform and they would use that to gather the information they need to make an educated vote. As well as we're going to get into media, getting into journalism. We're going to do our own media channel, like a YouTube and podcast, things like that eventually. So people will get some current events from us, as well as civic education, as well as we'll even have an entertainment aspect of it. So we want to be like this really big influence of like how to do things differently, as well as how to run a business more ethically. So there's like a lot of different branches of where we're looking to be, and in 5 years from now, we plan to be a really big organization with a lot of different tentacles and a lot of different services that we're providing. Right now, the biggest focus is the digital politics and all that, but then it's going to even branch out to just other ethical business services and also helping other organizations learn how to be more conducive to neurodiversity, as well as generally more ethical.
Is the website up and running?
It's up and running, futureis.org. It's continually evolving right now. We just finished our four pillars are now fully articulated on the website. All the written content's done. So we're literally just in the last couple of days, we just finished it off. So so people could go on our website, they'll learn about the 4 pillars, they could go into details of each of the 4 pillars, learn a little bit about the team. Some of the visuals are still not done. Within like the next week or two, there's going to be more images and also a lot of videos on there, a lot of videos of me explaining each of the pillars. So for people that are not good at that don't want to read as much, we'll have a lot of video content very soon to learn about all these intricacies through video as well. So it's good enough at this stage, but then in the next couple of weeks it'll be finished off.
How can people learn more about you and your work?
Yep. Yeah. So they could go right on the website. Like there's a page about the team, page about what I'm doing. And then there's also my LinkedIn is there's a link to our organization's LinkedIn, as well as mine personally. So they can look at my background. And another big piece is that as we get on our feet, we're going to be very big on interacting with America. We want to engage people. Eventually, we'll even be doing focus groups. Earlier on, we'll just do like surveys and polling and kind of get some feedback from people of how we're doing, as well as what are they concerned about politically and just generally in society. We want to really build a partnership with citizens. So a lot of that is about our own transparency. Really want to practice what we preach. So we're talking about accountability and transparency for politicians, but before that, we have to show that we're holding ourselves accountable and that we're also transparent in everything that we do.
On a final note, I just want you to give your impressions of your thoughts on neurodiversity in our society.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I believe that there's a lot more neurodiversity in society than we know about. You know, they're even saying back in history, like Einstein was probably neurodiverse, and like, you know, a lot of people of today, just I mean, really, even like people of genius levels and things like that, they have like these powerful strengths, but they also had weaknesses. They don't that's not in our history books as much, but they do have their weaknesses. And so I feel like neurodiversity is really key to understanding consciousness, understanding the human mind, understanding how different each of our minds can work separately from one another. It should be a really big focus. And I see it just talking to people, even neurotypical people, talking about neurodiversity and about seeing other perspectives. They could really relate to being able to see the world from different perspectives and talking about it from the way I'm talking about it, that like, it's not as simple as like, the way TV makes it out to be, of like everything just so black and white, and like these are good, these are bad, and like there's a lot more gray in society, and like people try to oversimplify how the world works, but humans are complex, and like there's so many complexities, and we're still figuring out our potential. I feel as we develop technology, we're still not even at near the potential that we are. We're still basically cavemen in society, and we're still learning what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to work together, find better ways to work together as one country, one planet. And so I think neurodiversity and studying different people's perspectives and comparing it is a great way to have that understanding. Like another way to say it is like as if we're all blind, and like we're trying to feel out what the real reality is, but like each of us sees a piece of it, but none of us see the whole picture, because we all have different experiences. None of us have had all experiences. And so if we piece together different pieces from the puzzle, eventually one day we could start really mapping out like, this is what reality is, and kind of come to like a consensus reality of society. So yeah, so I think neurodiversity is such a huge piece, and it's like, it's really built into the fundamentals of everything we're doing at Futures Now.
Well, Travis Misurell, the Future is Now Coalition. Thank you very much for spending time with us here at Different Brains, and we hope you'll come back, and we want to wish you good luck with all that you're doing.
Thank you so much. It was great having you here.
Exploring Different Brains is a production of Different Brains. Visit us at differentbrains.org.